you ever felt massively out of your depth, or had imposter syndrome, where you're in a situation which you are trained for, but you just feel like you're not? You just have that feeling inside you don't belong here.
I mean, what are we doing right now?
That's very fair. Yeah, okay. Your goal is there.
Yep.
Well, I'm going to tell you about somebody who then should be our hero. Somebody who did the exact opposite of that. A man who was in no way qualified for what he did, and yet, with all the confidence that we can only dream of, stormed in and did it anyway, and made a hash of it. But we'll get there. And the best part about this story is we don't actually know who he is. We only know him as LW Wright. And we know that's not his real name. And apart from that, we don't know anything else about him. So for this story, we're going to go back. Well, having talked about how we do a stellar foghorn leghorn accent, we're going to go to Talladega in 1982. To the Talladega Winston 500 NASCAR race.
That's cars, right?
Yes. So these are American Deep South, I think. I don't know where Talladega is, but I think it's somewhere I feel like it might be in Carolinas or Georgia or somewhere like that. But yeah.
I thought Florida, based on absolutely.
Could be Florida. Yeah, it could be. Somewhere around there anyway. Probably warm. So NASCAR 500, it's where they drive around in a circle for a whole day at 200 miles an hour. And it's a big deal. This race had a 100,000 person attendance, and it was nationally televised. So like I say, it's it's a big deal. It's it's not quite as big as Formula One, but it's definitely up there, as one of the biggest, motorsport things in the world. But the rules at the time in the 1980s meant that as long as you could pay the $100 registration fee, and you had, a legal car, you could race. That was the only rule. And, the thing is, those cars are quite expensive. So, that sort of, the registration was $100, but the car costs, considerably more. And so, most people, that led to it only really being professional racers. But a few weeks before this race, somebody contacted the newspaper and said that a person called LW Wright was declaring his intention to race. And they claim to have raced in over 40 Bush League, which is sort of go back to the Formula One analogy. As I understand it, I think that's their Formula 3 equivalent. So it's sort of, the lesser league.
So 50cc in a Mario Kart.
Yeah, basically. Yeah. And he claimed to have over 40 races in that. So, that was his, he's like, oh, I'm a proper racer, however. But people were suspicious because he was declaring to race a week before, but then the guy was like, I don't actually have a car. But for some reason, they were weirdly trusting about all this. So he claimed he had sponsorship. He gave names and he started writing, and he named these companies that were sponsoring him. And then he wrote the checks to buy a car. So he did pay half of the car in cash, but he wrote the rest, deposit or whatever, and then wrote the rest in checks. And he used checks again to pay for tires, crew jackets, licenses for his mechanics, all those things. And again, people weirdly trusting that this guy was like, yeah, my mechanics don't have licenses, but just bear with me here. So whatever. But then they contacted his sponsors to see, to ask them some questions about this LW Wright that they were sponsoring his car for. And the sponsors, well, that was the first they'd ever heard of him. And yet, still weirdly trusting, they still let him race, even though at this point he'd paid for a load of stuff with checks, basically said he had sponsorship. That was proven as a lie. But
so it's like going for a job interview and they say, okay, well, we'll just check with your references, and that your references say, I have never heard of this person ever.
Yeah,
and they go,
and then they're still going, well,
you know what?
Rules are rules. He's paid the registration fee. Why not? So somehow they still let him race. And like I say, this, whilst we do take the mick out of NASCAR, because they do drive in a circle. Like, how hard can it be? Like, you just turn left all day. But it is at 200 miles an hour. Like if you crash, you die. Like,
Yeah.
it's very. He crashed during qualifying, and yet it wasn't too bad of a crash. So his car, they could fix it, fix the bumper, whatever. So he had to start at the back, but he was still allowed to race. And then I think he got 26 laps in, I think it was. I should have written this down, but I didn't. But midway through the race, he was black flagged because he was going too slow and he was forced to retire. Because obviously driving at 200 miles an hour is scary. Driving at 100 miles an hour, that's scary.
But more dangerous if everyone else is going at 200.
100 miles an hour, exactly, which is why they forced him to retire.
Yeah.
So then he went, got his participation check, which was for about $1,500, left his car, and just left. Disappeared, took his check, left the car.
What a high-risk scam.
Yeah, well, this is the thing. Then all the checks, obviously, because at this stage, like, what else were you expecting?
Boing.
Exactly, they all bounced. That's it. To this day, nobody knows who he was. NASCAR paid for an investigation, never got anywhere. The police were involved. That was it. He just left, and nobody's ever claimed credit for it. Nobody knows. No leads have ever been found. This man just somehow rocked up. It's weird because if it was a scam, I don't think he actually made any money. Because, like I say, from what I've read, he paid the deposit that he paid on the car. So I say these cars are quite expensive because they are 200 mile an hour race cars. The amount he paid in cash, I'm pretty sure, is more, from what I understand, was more than the $1,500 he got as a as the participation bonus. So unless he was betting on him winning, which he could have done, with the amount of unearned confidence this man has, maybe he was really betting that he was just going to win the entire race.
He just thought he'd have beginner's luck, and he's gutted that he didn't win it immediately.
Yeah. And then he could have paid for his car, but no. So I'm pretty sure he made a loss on this scam. So I think he could well have just been died. And could have died.
Yeah.
But he has a pretty cool story out of it.
Yeah, but
which apparently he doesn't tell anybody. So
yeah, he never mentioned it again, and we don't know who he is. So it's like he got away with it, but
but got away with what? It's like you got away with nothing.
Minimal losses that could have been easily avoided.
You left a load of people out of pocket, but he didn't gain anything from that. It's it's not like robbing somebody. It's not like robbing someone else's car. It's just like setting someone else's car on fire and leaving. It's like neither of you has a car at the end of it. So nobody wins.
If they set the race off and then he immediately drives off the track and gets away with the car, that's one thing. But he just had a go at the race and didn't do very well.
Yeah, but I mean, you still have to admire it.
Oh, you got to admire the confidence.
Yeah. And so this is my, to our listeners and who are, I might as well declare my intention now. I'm going to race in Monaco. In Formula One.
But on foot.
On foot. I'm just going to jog.
But, as long as you get in Monaco, your participation money is probably quite high.
Yeah, probably doesn't cover the cost of parking in Monaco.
No, true. Yeah.
But yeah, now that brings me to the end of my topic. Unless you have anything or any other questions to ask, or
no, I'm happy to move on.